So who's here for 36 Keys Hill Backyards? Thank you. I'm guessing nobody for the Alison Leisure Centre. 158 Purdy Common Hurling. Okay. And Dairy House Farm, Swan Lane. Okay, so I think Dairy House Farm, Swan Lane has it. So members of the board, are you happy if we bring Dairy House Farm to the front of the agenda to save everyone having to put up with for the rest of the evening? The good news is that will confuse Mr. Collins' slides.
Testy schools now.
So, good evening, everyone. Welcome to tonight's meeting of the Planning Development Board. First item on the agenda is the evacuation procedure. For those who don't know, we are not anticipating having any tests of the fire alarm. So, if you hear the sound, it's likely to be a real issue. Please then leave the council house by the nearest safest exit, which is likely to be that door. If for any reason we can't use that, that will be the front door at the entrance to the civic suite. As you know, as you enter the building, a lady at the front door took a register of who's here, so please don't just go away, because otherwise we'll have a fireman running around the building with somebody who's at home. Apologies for absence of members on official business. I've got apologies from Councillor Jens, who's substituted by Councillor Smith, Councillor Dervix, who's substituted by Councillor Drury, Councillor Ridley, who is substituted by Councillor Mealia. Are there any other apologies? Members, any
Apologies for Councillor Parsons is away on holiday. We've miscalculated.
are you happy to note those apologies? Councillor Smith, Reary and Mealia, welcome to the meeting, and I hope you enjoy the experience. Does anyone have any disclosable pecuniary or non-pecuniary interests you'd like to draw to the board's attention? Okay, thank you. So, given that, you'll bring forward the application for land at Dairy House Farm, Swan Lane, Grendon. We have two speakers, Elizabeth Andrews and Roger Tustain. Elizabeth Andrews, on my list, you're here first, so if you'd like to take the speaker's chair while Mr. Collinson introduces his report. Mr. Collinson.
Thank you. This application seeks outline planning permission for a development of up to 70 dwellings on approximately 3 hectares of land to the south of Dairy House Farm. All matters are reserved with the exception of access. In terms of the site context, you can see from the plan in front of you, the eastern edge of the development, as you can see my cursor, is the recently completed development from Dairy House Farm. The land around it forms part of the wider part of RH1 reserve housing allocation identified within the local plan. The site itself sits within the development boundary of Grendon, and it's bounded by housing to the west, agricultural land to the east, the farm buildings of Dairy House Farm to the north, and a housing fronting the A5 to the south. The site itself is entirely within flood zone 1. The proposal is an outline application for up to 70 dwellings. The plan that you can see in front of you is a parameters plan, and that's what you're considering. There is an indicative layout plan, but that is, as it says, indicative. This parameters plan indicates where the access to the site, the main vehicle access, would be from, which is off the existing estate, and these 2 arms of red areas there show where the main vehicular access is. Within the scheme as well, there's an emergency access which comes to the east here, and there'll be a demolition of an existing dwelling. And this would only be used in times of emergency. If the rest of the estate, for some reason, whether it's fire, car crash, etc., this would provide an emergency access into the estate and scheme. The application would, as I've indicated, will be for up to 70 dwellings. 40% would be affordable. That equates to up to 28 dwellings in total. As you can see from the plan in front of you, there would be areas of open space. There would be retained hedge line along this eastern boundary, and a pedestrian link linking through to Watling Street to the A5 here. As you can see on the agenda, there'd be consultation responses and objections received. In terms of the objections received, I forwarded through a letter from one of the speakers, which included details of a number of issues, including one, an issue that's been raised in terms of a ransom strip. Two, an indication about non-compliance and a breach of 150 dwelling cap in terms of the access to the site from Spong Lane using the existing access. That's what the objectors raised. An issue about the physical constraints of the site and tracking details. An engineering solution from a highway engineer perspective, and an issue in terms of the wider allocation and strategic allocation of RH1. In terms of the considerations of the application from officers, the council, as you'll see from the agenda, indicates the position in terms of the housing land supply, and members are aware of this from previous applications, that we do not have a 5-year supply of housing. And because of that lack of supply, then the tilted balance is engaged when it comes to determining applications. And that means there's a presumption in favour of sustainable development, which means that planning permission should be granted unless the adverse impacts would significantly and demonstrably outweigh the benefits of a scheme. In terms of the principle of the development, the site itself forms part of the reserve housing allocation. As you'll see on the agenda, one of the appendices includes that allocation, and it's shown here. So the site itself is this element, this is RH1. The policy LP38 allows for the release of housing, this reserve housing site, when the housing supply falls below a certain requirement, and it's also subject to other issues as well in terms of access, flooding, infrastructure being satisfactorily addressed. As you'll see from the report, officers consider that the first criterion is satisfied in terms of the housing supply position, and the second criteria is assessed through the technical consultations and is considered acceptable. In terms of highway and access, principal concerns have been raised by both the parish council and residents relating to highway matters. There have been 25 objections that discuss issues such as traffic generation, highway safety, junction capacity, highway arrangements, cumulative impact from previous phases. These matters have been addressed by both Warwickshire County Council Highways and National Highways. They're both statutory consultees. Now, whilst guidance would normally favour a second access serving developments. Highways, Warwickshire County Council have indicated that the provision of the emergency access, where none exists, means that actually the additional numbers created here would not be detrimental from a highway perspective. Warwickshire County Council also consider that the development wouldn't result in a severe highway impact. This is their view. So the bar you have to reach to in terms of highway is severe impact. Because of the numbers we're talking about here, in terms of the additional 70, they do not consider it that it's a severe impact. In terms of the increase in traffic generated by the 70 dwellings, they say it's not severe from those National Planning Policy Framework terms. Now, National Highways, they obviously look after Watling Street. They similarly conclude that the impact on the strategic road network, including the A5 and the Boot Hill roundabout, would be minimal, and they would not object. Officers therefore consider that any weight in terms of any highway objections is none at all, because those statutory consultees do not object. In terms of flood risk and drainage, members will note concerns raised from residents, but the site lies wholly within flood zone 1, and the proposal incorporates a SUD scheme as part of the scheme, and there's betterment. That's highlighted here on the cursor. So there's that scheme, there's also swales, that attenuation basin, and there'll be controlled discharge rate in terms of greenfield runoff rates. The local lead flood authority doesn't object. In terms of landscape impact, the proposal would result in the loss of a greenfield site, and therefore there would be some landscape harm. However, the site itself adjoins the existing development adjacent to it. The landscape effects would be localised and minimal. The retention of the existing hedgeline and trees would be largely retained along the eastern boundary. And there'd be planting along with that. So actually, although there'd be some landscape harm, it would be limited. In terms of other technical matters, there's no objections in terms of ecology, archaeology, environmental health, Sport England, fire and rescue. The proposal can achieve biodiversity net gain, and all ecological mitigation can be secured through planning conditions. In terms of affordable housing, there's a significant benefit to the scheme through the delivery of affordable housing. There'd also be additional infrastructure improvements in terms of £1.28 million towards education provision, public rights of way improvements, library contributions, road safety improvements, biodiversity monitoring as well, open space and leisure and sports provision too. Together, these represent a substantial package of mitigation. Now we need to consider the planning balance in terms of decision making. There are harms. I cannot say there are no harms to the scheme. There'd be limited conflict in terms of LP38, in terms of coming forward ahead of a comprehensive master plan. There'd be limited landscape harm. There'd be the loss of approximately 2.5 hectares of agricultural land. Against this, though, there are benefits to the scheme that should be weighed. The delivery of 70 dwellings, affordable housing, contribution to addressing the housing need and the supply of the shortfall, the biodiversity net gain, open space, infrastructure contributions too, economic benefits during construction, sustainable development within the settlement boundary. And in terms of the planning balance there, therefore, it's recommended that the adverse impacts do not significantly and demonstrably outweigh the benefits, and therefore it's recommended for approval. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Welcome to the council house. My colleague will now explain the rules on public engagement.
Good evening. You've got 3 minutes to speak. I'll remind you at the 2-minute marker that you've got 1 minute outstanding. I'll start the clock when you start speaking. Good evening. My name is Elizabeth Andrews. I live on Hastings Road within the existing Phase 2 development. As a chartered geologist with 18 years Tier 1 major infrastructure experience, I urge this board to defer this application. Look at tonight's agenda. Item 5A safeguards a 3-child home with strict 15-minute interval slots to protect residential amenity. Yes, item 5E requires a 70-home transit corridor over unadopted landlocked roads with no agreed planning restrictions. While I accept the principle of housing growth, I object to routing Phase 3 traffic for Phase 2's minor roads. These streets are privately owned with no plan for council adoption and are constrained by on-street parking, reducing the carriageway to a single lane. Images 1 and 2 of my photo sheet show that during Phase 2 construction, HGVs repeatedly mounted curbs and destroyed verges, requiring the protected timber fencing shown in image 3. Adding Phase 3 construction traffic creates an avoidable safety. Tonight's vote determines the legal principle of access, therefore making the deferral of these details a procedural contradiction. The Highways Authority, May 2026 response explicitly states that no access drawings have been provided for review. How can the board safely approve the principle of access tonight based on statutory sign-off absent of detailed plans when the consultee's position relies on yet to be submitted engineering designs, including the demolition of 191 Watling Street? Because our estate network consists of unadopted private assets, the Highway Authority lacks statutory jurisdiction to enforce Section 278 street works. Furthermore, the Pegasus technical note confirms the applicant and WCC formally agreed to use this estate layout to access the remainder of the 360-home RH1 allocation. Funneling the strategic allocation through an unadopted, structurally insufficient estate is an unsustainable engineering goal. This piecemeal approach strays away from comprehensive master planning, disconnecting the scheme from infrastructure goals of the broader footprint in the policy LP38. Under CDM 2015 safety principles, hazards must be eliminated at source. Why force heavy machinery through our narrow private roads? For Phase 3, a viable alternative access exists by routing construction traffic from Swan Lane by the existing Dairy House Farm Drive through RH1 allocated land, partially deconstructing the man-made bund between Dairy House Farm and Phase 3 development. This bypasses our estate entirely. For the wider RH1 allocation, alternative access must be required, for example, directly from the A5 east of Green Lane, wholly within the RH1 footprint. I urge the board to defer this application. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Members, do you have any questions for us? No questions, so thank you. Our next speaker is Mr. Roger Chastain. Mr. Chastain, if you take the chair. Mr. Chastain, welcome to the council house. My colleague will now explain the rules on public engagement.
Good evening. You've got 3 minutes to speak. After 2 minutes, I'll remind you you've got 1 minute outstanding. I'll start the clock when you start speaking.
Good evening, members. I'm the planning consultant instructed by Henry Fisher, the landowner, to manage the submission of his outline planning application for up to 70 dwellings on land at the south of Dairy House Farm, Grendon. The officer's detailed and comprehensive report into this application recommends approval of the scheme, which of course we support. The scheme was submitted more than 12 months ago, and throughout that period, we've worked with your officers and all technical stakeholders collectively to ensure that all the technical issues have been resolved. Set out in the report, the site is located within both the RH1 reserve housing allocation, as designated in the adopted local plan, and the emerging North Warwickshire local plan. When advising our client, we specifically identified a discrete area of land within the current settlement policy boundary that could come forward with a small natural extension to the recently completed housing development. This relatively small area previously allocation H18 in the former local plan, is physically contained from the wider policy RH1 area, which for the information of members is owned and promoted by Henry Fisher, our client. Clearly, given our client's wider land interests, we were keen to evolve a small scheme that would be policy compliant and would not prejudice the long-term planning of the area, an area which we are currently master planning as a potential large-scale site. We'll be engaging with officers of the council, the county council and National Highways over the coming months as part of the local plan process. I stress again that this area is discrete, relating to existing development and in no way prejudices wider policy objectives. Significantly, the alignment of a potential road bypass corridor, which would naturally align with the existing rail corridor. This application can be delivered in the short term, providing much needed market and 40% affordable housing to assist the council's current housing land supply shortfall in a location that has importantly been identified by the council in the current local plan as a suitable appropriate location for growth. It is noted that there are currently 132 applicants on the council's housing waiting list with the wish to live in Grendon. This development will deliver 28 affordable units, making a significant dent in that need. There are no technical objections from any statutory consultee, and local clients, including Parish Council, appear to have no issue with the principle of development. The key local issue is access. It is important to note that both Highways Authority and National Highways have no objection to proposals, confirming that traffic generation from the scheme will be minimal. Whilst it is accepted that the scheme would increase the number of dwellings from a single point of access onto Swan Lane, it's important to note that this proposal will provide an emergency access to the site, thereby providing a benefit to existing residents should the current access to the Swan Lane be restricted. This emergency access would not be possible without this proposal coming forward. In summary, after carefully considering the land supply position, national policy and local plan policy, your officers recommend approval of the scheme. We respectfully urge you to support your officer recommendation.
Thank you very much. Members, do you have any questions for our speaker? Just a question from me, I think, Mr. Twiston. Thank you for your comments. I think you're making valid points in which I think were aimed at saying if we approve the application this evening in outline, that will help us with a 5-year land supply and help take some of the need away from the council house waiting list. When would you anticipate work starting on this side?
Well, if permission, so I forgot to turn that on originally. If permission is granted tonight, there'll be a section 106 agreement that we have to finalise. It will probably take about 3 months, and then the site will be marketed. And I would imagine all the dwellings will be complete within approximately 2.5 years. So it would all fall within the 5-year monitoring window.
And how does that compare to waiting for the master plan?
Well, the master plan is complicated because of the issues relating to the relief road. So there'll be a considerable period of negotiation with National Highways and the County Council. In reality, the wider site is likely to come forward through the local plan review. At the moment, your local plan still allocates this as a reserve. This is the emerging local plan, allocates this site as a reserve site. It's not being allocated RH1 in the emerging plan. We are master planning it, and we're working with officers through the local plan process. But I think what we'll be doing is working through your new local plan process with officers and not submitting a planning application on RH1 until your new local plan is at the earliest in place.
But that won't take too long, given that we're in regulation 18 now, regulation 19 pretty quickly. I'm just trying to understand, particularly given the fact that any large site will release houses for development in batches rather than as a whole, what the relative difference is in your mind between this application and the site as a whole.
In reality, your local plan is going to be submitted by the deadline, I'd imagine, which is the end of this year to the Secretary of State. The local plan examination probably will take place summer next year and probably not adopted until the end of 2027. So the preparation of an application of the scale of RH1 in its totality, which is probably going to incorporate a range of other facilities as well, will come. It's going to take at least a year to prepare an application for the RH1 site. Therefore, and then probably another year for determination. You must recall this application has been submitted for well over a year, and it's taken a year to
effectively negotiate a suitable scheme with all the stakeholders. So a scheme which is much larger, potentially over 400 dwellings on RH1, is going to take considerable time to negotiate. I can't put a time limit on it, but I would imagine no dwellings from the RH1 wider RH1 scheme will be coming forward within the 5-year monitoring period, which you're currently judged against in terms of sort of your housing land supply.
Thank you. Members, any other questions for our speaker? In which case, thank you very much indeed. Members who'd like to open the discussion? Councillor Bell.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, in principle, I've got no objection to the housing, but I did go on a site visit on Friday and was really shocked actually at the access through that housing estate and how narrow the roads are. And also the fact that they're not adopted roads. So in effect, the current residents are responsible for the maintenance. So what happens if 70 more houses are added to that? What are the arrangements for that? I think also there's a question about where the construction traffic should go, because it's certainly not suitable for it to go through the housing estate. And I think the other thing that concerns me is these houses coming forward in a piecemeal fashion, 70, when the whole reserve application is much bigger, which allows the National Highways to say, well, it's only 70 houses, that won't have much impact on the A5. And then we get another 70 and another 70, and we don't get the full picture of the impact on the A5 and other roads, in fact, in the area. So I'm really concerned about that. Now, it would be really helpful if we had just an outline of the master plan for the whole site, even if it's only an indication, and hopefully it would show another road from this proposed development going through the rest of the reserve site, which would make life a lot easier for the people existing in the housing estate, and would give us some comfort about what the overall plan is. And I do understand that it takes a long time to get a full master plan together, or some indication. And even if the roads couldn't be built yet, but there was an indication of where they might go from this site through the rest of the reserve site, that would be, excuse me, that would be really helpful. And so I would, Chairman, I'd like to see deferment till we get a bit more information on this.
Thank you. Councillor Watson.
Yes, thank you, Chair. It follows on from Councillor Bell's comments, really. I mean, I've seen an overarching plan from RH1. No RH1 is in the plan. However, you're right, we are judged on 5 years. However, it's a 20-year plan. So we're looking actually from a local plan that goes out much further than that. Just to echo Councillor Bell's thoughts, when we did the site visit over the week, last Friday, I would like to see something more kind of holistic on that site, because it's fundamental. You know, if we can see where other routes and other accesses, always the intent that this is always going to be isolated and disconnected from the larger RH1 site, and that its access will always be through Spon Lane or through the current housing estate and on Spon Lane, which is a concern because it's not adopted, as Councillor Bell said. So, and I don't think it takes long. You can have an overarching view on what the holistic idea and concept is in outline, but I think it would give us much more comfort on what that site could look like, because we've all seen the overarching where there's a strip by the railway line that says that might be for the A5 diversion, that might be for the thing. Until we kind of understand that, it's very difficult to view this site in isolation.
Thank you. Councillor Watford.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to echo my colleagues' comments. Another concern, as well as the issue of the A5, which we all know will have a knock-on effect if it's 70 houses or, you know, however many, because we keep getting these pockets, as you rightfully said, put along, and then all of a sudden, what's the overall impact of that? We're already at bursting point. We know that because we live locally. I know that estate well. And what I will say is, when Spon Lane floods, for those of you that don't know, it blocks the road completely. And this happens many times in a year. It is always the first road locally in the north of the north to flood locally. When that goes, we all get our flood receptors ready, because we know that once Spon Lane is our little radar, if you like, to say, right, this is happening. So that point is, it always floods first, and when it does, it completely blocks the road that side. So for me, that would take out that exit straight away, you know, so automatically pushing everything onto the A5, which would further complicate the issues that we're saying. So again, it's all about local knowledge here, and I think it's really important. Yes, it's like a little rabbit warren. God knows, you can hardly get, and my car's not massive, but I can hardly get around that estate already. So how they navigate any HGV stuff, God only knows. For one thing, but also when it floods, because it does, where is all that heavy plant coming from? Because it won't get through Spon Lane. So where else is it going to get to and from? Because that's my anxiety. We all know it floods, and it floods terribly. So that's a big concern. I don't know if that's been reflected. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak? Councillor Hunt, please.
Well, I was just going to make a comment about the statutory bodies to start with. It amazes me that we talk to Highways England and the county council, and they start from the premise that there's nothing wrong with the A5. It's a perfectly good road. So it's never blocks up. They never have an accident on the M6. You don't end up with the M42 closing 3 or 4 times a week, and all the diversions that take place. And I just wonder how we could get back to the point where we can say to the Highways England, look at the reality, not a paper exercise. And I know that's not going to help here today, but as far as I'm concerned, the A5 is a major issue. And I never even thought about Spon Lane. My daughter used to live in the Dairy House Farm, the first phase. And always a problem every winter. Thank you.
Councillor Palmer.
Thank you, Chair. Certainly agree with the comments that have been made this evening by colleagues. And I did note it, in fact, it's noted in the objections as well, because I've already written it down and I have it smart. I let's put down increasing up to 140 vehicles. So that was obviously well noted. And they're right, I didn't have the opportunity to go and have a look at the site visit, but it's amazing with these wonderful things called Google Maps. And I've just been travelling along that road, and I would agree that that is an inadequate road. It is so narrow. I'm surprised that it's got the width of it that's been allowed. I really am surprised. And looking that you've got L and I think it's L and H Fisher complex further on, I can see when council officers talked about the HGV vehicles, and I'm thinking I can see again difficulty. And again, as Councillor Watson and Bell have alluded to, and that is a deferment for a master plan. And I sort of want to know more about affordable housing. And in actual fact, even larger is the infrastructure itself, because that's going to increase in the need for more and more infrastructure. And as Councillor Waffles has alluded to, beg pardon, we've talked about flooding in that area. And I do know this area fairly well, although it's been a long time since visiting school. I don't think it's there anymore. The Sparrowdale School used to be over that area, so I know that travelling to that on a regular basis with my son being at Sparrowdale, the A5 and the amount of traffic that is up there is absolutely incredible. But in short, Chairman, I would very much welcome deferment and a sight of a much better view of a master plan, so we see how it pans out year on year, not just a small section. I want to see the whole lot, so everybody knows exactly what's going to be happening over the number of years that it'll take. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Members, I've got one proposal for deferment. Can I just clarify the reason for deferment is to obtain more information relating to the master plan and the future rollout of the reserve site as well as this particular application?
Yes, Chairman, could we also get some clarification on the unadopted roads? Are they going to be adopted? And if not, what's the arrangement with the new users of those roads? That would be helpful.
Thank you. Are there any other proposals? In which case, members, we need to take a vote on deferment. Can I see all of those in favour of deferment? And that's unanimous. Thank you very much. So the application is deferred. Sounds from what the applicant's agent was saying, it's unlikely to come back at the next meeting, but we'll get some more information during.
Sorry, was that seconded? I'm happy, oh, sorry, I didn't see.
Yeah,
I didn't see.
Councillor
Sorry.
Watson.
I was happy to, if not.
Oh, we're going to vote now. So members of the public, those of you who are here for that application, you are, of course, free to stay and be entertained by the rest of the meeting, but if you've got a sock goal to deal with, you're welcome to leave. All of it. Members, I think we'll go back to the beginning of the agenda, and the first item is the minutes of the meeting held on the 6th of July. Can I see all those in favour of me signing that as a true and accurate? Any against? Thank you very much. The next application was to do with the 36 Kingston, with the Enza. Mr. Lee Faulkner and Karen Porter have both indicated they'd like to speak. Mr. Faulkner is due to take the speaker's test, whilst Mr. Tomlinson introduces the decision board.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, I'd like to just give Councillor Wright's views on the application which was received. He's unable to be here tonight. So if I can read those out. He says, unfortunately, I can't be in attendance at tonight's planning meeting, but what I'm about to put forward can be read out, it will be appreciated. This application has caused quite the concern amongst householders in Keys Hill, with parking being the main concern. Those who were in attendance at the site visit on Friday witnessed the parking issues, with one side of the street having no driveways to park upon. Thus, their vehicles were parked on the curbside. The Village Hall car park is not an option, as a street barrier is put across the entrance overnight. A busy hairdressers and chip shop are immediately adjacent and neighbours to the property, which creates parking issues. The applicant parked a large vehicle on the driveway at 36 Keys Hill during the site visit, which provided with the fact that there was only room for 2 vehicles. Even if the front wall was taken down, then we have to take the shift patterns into consideration, which will cause problems with parking. The green space in front of the garden belongs to Warwickshire County Council, and you can see it from probably the photo on the right hand side there. So the applicant will have little choice to other than to extend the parking areas. He indicates myself, Councillor Davey and Baddesley Ensor Parish Council are not comfortable with the application due to the lack of parking provision on an already overburdened street, so therefore would encourage members to vote against the recommendation of approval. Okay. From an officer point of view, taking into account the agenda, the application seeks planning permission for change of use of the property that you can see in the photos in front of you, which is a semi-detached property, 36 Keys Hill, to be used as a residential care home for up to 3 children, together with a single-storey extension at the side and rear. The application was deferred by the planning board to allow for further information and for the site visit, which took place on Friday. The details about the operation of the home, staffing arrangement, parking provision and traffic generation, and the potential noise impacts. Information is being provided in terms of a statement of purpose, a parking management statement, and a noise management plan. As you'll see from the photos in front of you, the scheme proposes to remove the wall that you'll see and create space for up to 3 vehicles in front of on the driveway. This is conditioned as part of the scheme, and will require to be provided before any operations take place. As again, you'll see a number of objections have been received, raising concerns in terms of noise, disturbance, antisocial behaviour, staffing levels, visitor numbers and parking demand. These have all been carefully considered by officers. However, planning decisions must be based on any demonstrable impact rather than future occupants. Within the agenda, there is considered conditions which would ensure that the proposed use would not generate levels of impact greater than a residential property. Accordingly, it's considered the proposal would accord to policies in the local plan, and therefore it's recommended that the application be approved subject to conditions controlling occupancy, parking, operational management and noise mitigation. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Faulkner, welcome back to the council house.
Thank you.
In case you've not quite remembered, my colleague will now explain the rules on public engagement.
Good evening. You've got 3 minutes to speak. At 2 minute marker, I'll give you the heads up that you've got 1 minute remaining. I'll start the clock when you start speaking.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, everybody. My name's Lee Faulkner, the owner of 34 Keysville, the attached property. First, in regards to this application being lodged into a family home, typical family home in North Warwickshire is 2.3 occupants. This will far exceed this because we're talking about 3 children and 4 to 5 staff plus visitors, as in various agencies visiting. It's also previously mentioned about staff car sharing. How can this be talked about, car sharing, if we're doing a staggered shift changeover every 15 minutes? Surely this will cause more disruption with the changeovers being done inside. It would mean more staff and more cars over a longer period of time, and this will still be over 365 days of the year. Regarding the complaints recording investigation, it's a great idea to record and investigate any complaints, but the neighbours will still have to put up with any problems in the meantime while this issue has been sorted. Also, policing this business will be left in the neighbours' hands. There was a problem with a typical family home. The issue could be sorted by direct contact with the occupants, not that of an email. Regarding the rear extension plan, we still can't see how a pitched roof is going to work on this extension. Surely it's going to block the light into our kitchen. And it's not in keeping with the rest of Keys Hill, which rear extensions all have flat roofs. With regards to the parking, we understand that we don't understand whether the applicant's being able to purchase green space at the front. In regards to always saying that we need 3 parking spaces to operate. We don't even know, we never even know who owns this green space. And if that's so, can the rest of the residents start buying all the green land up out front and extending their drives, which will have a massive impact on parking. And over the course of this application, we found most of our answers to our concerns have been speculation rather than factual. We've seen statements, it states 3 children ages between 11 and 17, then stating aims and objectives. This will accommodate 1 child aged 18 to 17. We're confused to which one this is. We feel that we've been given the best case scenario as well, rather than the worst case. How can we trust this business will be run in accordance to said statements, as they seem to differ so much from the very start? Finally, we found no evidence of any other semi-detached properties being used as children's homes, only detached properties with land and parking, which have no impact on the immediate neighbours. Thank you for listening to my concerns.
Thank you very much. Member, do you have any questions, Vice Speaker? Well, no questions, so thank you, Mr. Faulkner. Our next speaker is Kieran Porter. Mr. Porter, I think you're joining us on Teams, so
Yes, I am.
welcome to the meeting. My colleague will now explain public engagement to you.
Good evening. You've got 3 minutes to speak. I'll remind you at the 2 minute marker that you've got 1 minute remaining. I'll start the clock when you start speaking.
Thank you for allowing me to speak today. I'm here this evening to speak in support of the planning application for 36 Keys Hill, seeking a change of use from C3 dwelling to a C2 residential home for up to 3 children. This application is about far more than a change of use. It's about providing a safe, stable and therapeutic home for up to 3 potentially vulnerable children who deserve an opportunity to grow up in a caring and family environment. This application was first submitted back in January, and since then, this is now the 4th time that it's come up before the council, with myself being involved in 3 of those and Memory in 1. Throughout the process, we have listened carefully to every concern raised and have responded thoroughly and professionally. Concerns regarding noise have been addressed through a detailed good neighbour and noise management plan. Questions about how the home will operate have been answered through a comprehensive statement of purpose, prepared in line with Ofsted regulations, setting out staffing, safeguarding, education, potential routines, admissions and behaviour management. Concerns regarding parking and traffic have also been addressed through detailed operational information, demonstrating that vehicle movements will be minimal and comparable to those of a family home. Importantly, the professional officers who have assessed this application have now reached their conclusions, both with planning officers and environmental health having reviewed the evidence that we've submitted and are satisfied that the concerns raised have been appropriately addressed and have recommended this application meets the necessary planning requirements for approval. The recommendation has not been reached. That recommendation has not been reached lightly, and it follows months of scrutiny, requests for additional information and careful assessment of the evidence that we've provided. The need for homes like this is also clear. Warwickshire has around 780 children in care, with around 100 of those requiring residential care. The County Council has recognised that with its own sufficiency strategy that there is a shortage of local children's residential provision, meaning that too many vulnerable children are placed outside of their communities, away from their schools, friends and support networks. This proposal is just for 3 children. It's not an institution. It is a normal family home where children who have experienced trauma can receive therapeutic care within an ordinary residential community. Planning decisions must be based on evidence rather than perception. And over the past 7 months, we have responded to every concern raised. We have demonstrated how the home will operate, how neighbours will be respected, and how any potential impacts will be effectively managed. At this point, the professional planning and environmental experts are satisfied, the evidence has been tested and the concerns raised addressed, and the recommendation before you is one of approval. I therefore respectfully ask the committee to support any recommendation and approve this application, not only because it satisfies planning policy, but because it will provide 3 vulnerable children with the opportunity to live safely, locally, and within the stability they deserve. Thank you for your time.
Right. Members, have any questions for us speaking? Mr. Watley?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Mr. Porter. Would you be able to detail for me a little bit more about how the sleeping arrangements will be for 3 children, and would it be 2 members of staff? I see that you've applied for an extension, but I just wanted you to talk me through how that would be. Thank you.
Not a problem. So, sorry.
Possible for you to turn your camera on so that we can see
Oh,
you?
sorry, of course. Yeah, not a problem.
Thank you.
Not a problem. So the extension at the rear is to improve living area within the property. I think many houses nowadays, we know that there's, most of the time plenty of bedrooms, but the living area is not quite what we would like it to be. So, that's just hopefully to improve that within the home. But in terms of sleeping conditions and sleeping arrangements, the difficulty is that we always look at, in a worst case scenario. I think within a 3-bed children's home, certainly in my experience, you would likely be looking at 1 waking night member of staff, someone who stays awake throughout the 12-hour shift, and a member of staff that sleeps and is there to be woken up in case of emergency. And that's certainly the arrangement that we would be looking for a 3-child home in this case.
Councillor Humphries?
One of the last comments you made said that there was going to be local, live locally. Are you assuming that everybody will be sorted from North Warwickshire area or from Warwickshire, or do you intend to bring people in from other areas?
The primary focus within the strategy that's been raised by North Walks is to ensure that local children stay within that locality. So primary focus is to have North Walks children stay within the region. We can't see, if for example there's no children as a requirement on a referral list for this service, I can't say whether they would accept from out of area or not, but it would always be the primary focus to accept children needing a residential placement first and foremost from within the local authority.
Thank you. Any other questions, members? In which case, thank you, Mr. Porter. No more questions.
Thank you.
Members who'd like to speak?
Thank you, Chair. Me personally, looking at this application throughout the 4 times that it's been to the board, I do think there is a desperate need for homes just like this for children to remain in the area. And whilst I do recognise the concerns about parking, I think that obviously the conditions need to be looked at about that. But I do think there's a desperate need for it, and I do think that the benefits will way better than the harm. So I am minded to support the application.
Is that a proposal? To grant consent?
Well, when it comes to mentioning it.
Councillor Watson?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Having done the site visit, I can understand the concerns around parking. However, I believe the wall is going to come down, so it's going to have space for free parking. The point I'd like to raise is it was picked up by the previous speaker around the roof to the rear, i.e. the roof between 36 and 34. It is proposed as a gable end, isn't it? Whereas it would probably be less harsh if it was a hipped end. But I appreciate that many of the buildings there, it's hipped at the front, but at the end, at the back to the left there, where it's gabled, I think if that was hipped as well, it would probably be less harsh for the neighbouring property. So I don't know if we can build that into a condition or a request.
Mr. Thomason?
Yeah, I can understand why if members felt that it would be it's currently unacceptable. Certainly hipping it would be potential, and that's already done on the other side. So it could be recommended that that is considered by the applicant if the scheme was to be approved, recommended for approval as well.
So I think what Councillor Watson's saying is, you want a condition to that effect?
Yeah, it could be conditioned that way, notwithstanding the submitted details, that the rear elevation is hipped to reduce the impact on the neighbour.
Councillor Watson?
Yes, it's exactly that, Chair. I mean, it would have to go on the building regs because of the pitch of the roof. It's going to be quite a fairly shallow pitch. So I understand and accept that it would have to go through building regs, etc. But I just think the hipped roof would be less severe for the neighbouring property.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak? Councillor Rearing?
Yeah, just say that I agree with those councillors that have spoken. I'm not particularly convinced by the issues around parking, because actually you could end up, if you turn this down, you could have a couple with 2 adult children, and have 4 cars. So I don't think the fact it's a care facility necessarily means it will end up with more cars than a sort of private house. And certainly I work from home. I know that I live actually opposite a bungalow that's a similar care facility, and I wouldn't say they had any more traffic than other properties in the street that have carers for 3 to 5 times a day, or adult children. There's a lot of retired people in the street who come and go from the house a lot more than sort of families. So I don't think that refusing this would safeguard any kind of parking issues.
Thank you. Councillor Hayfield?
In an ideal world, I wish this had been
different house in a different location with a bit more space around it, things it's got. But we're not in an ideal world, and as you all know, remind us, we have to judge the application in front of us rather than the application that we might have wished to see. A general comment first is that where these high intensity care homes have been established elsewhere in the borough, they've generated a lot of hot air to start off with, and absolutely zero complaints afterwards. They just blended into the community or the landscape, depending on where they are, without any real demonstrable harm. I think the concerns over car parking are fairly real. I cannot think of a sound planning reason for turning this down. Thank you. Councillor Phillips.
Yes, thank you, Chair. With that amendment, I'm happy to move the recommendation, Chair.
Thank you. Before we move to a vote, just a question to Mr. Collinson. One of the comments that the first speaker made was he wasn't aware of any semi-detached houses where this type of use take place. Are you aware of any non-detached properties where this takes place, either within the borough or outside, or any like planning guidance that said it shouldn't be?
There's no guidance, but there are a number of semi-detached properties in and around my locality, Holsworth, Dordon, where group care homes, etc., have semi-detached properties, which are under the same use class. Certainly, I'm aware of those. I can't recall any recently that have been brought to board, though. But certainly there are a number in North Warwickshire that I'm aware of. I think of.
I must admit, I was thinking of one in Curdworth. I mean, it's some years ago since we granted consent, but I thought there was at least one in Curdworth.
Was that the detached property on Farthing Lane?
No.
No.
It's on the main road.
It's on the main road in. Yeah. I can certainly think ones around Station Road, Polesworth, where there are a number of properties.
Okay. Thank you. So, members, I've got one proposal, I think, which only. Oh, sorry, Councillor Fowler.
Thank you, Chair.
I'm never sure when you.
That's okay. It was me. I was just looking through and I was deeply looking for something and I couldn't find it. I'm just going to ask her to give me Chair, because I'm seeing that possibly 6 to 8 people were in the report. Potentially got 3 children and 2 staff. But I was just thinking what got me was the changeover will be at 2000 hours through to 8 o'clock in the morning. So I was just thinking, and maybe this is the extension. I was just thinking, well, how many bedrooms has it got in the building? Because potentially, I don't know, it's got three bedrooms for the children, and then some accommodation for the staff, because I would have thought be staying overnight, but I couldn't see it in there. So forgive me, Chair. I was desperately looking through it this afternoon, but I couldn't find it.
So
Mr. Collinson.
I think looking at the accommodation, we've only got the ground floor plan here, but the 3 bedrooms upstairs, those would be for the children.
Yeah.
There'd be a bedroom downstairs where the garage exists, where you can see my cursor on the plan there.
Yeah, sorry, Mr. Collison, that I was trying to look at that, it disappeared.
Yeah.
Early on,
So that would be where the bedroom would be for adults, because obviously the safeguarding of the children, they'd all be upstairs together.
Yeah.
And I think, Councillor, that was the original proposal in respect to the plan. The new proposal is condition 9, which is 8 o'clock, 8:15 and 8:30, 6 PM, 6:15 and 6:30. So, members, I've had one proposal, which I need a second for, that the application is granted subject to an amended condition relating to the HIP. Is there a second? Thank you. And are there any other proposals? In which case, we have a proposal that consent is granted subject to an additional condition. Can I see those in favour of granting consent? And those against? And abstention. So that's granted. Thank you very much. So I'd now like to move to application 459 for land to the south of 158 Early Common. Given that we still have those of the public who, for some reason, want to hear what we have to say. So rather than discuss applications where we have no attending, we should move that around.
Yeah.
For application 495 for Early Common, we have two speakers, Mr. Richard Foster and Mr. John Gibbon, after that, Tracy McCready. So, Mr. Foster and Mr. Gibbon, if you'd like to take the speaker's chair while Mr. Collinson introduces his report. Mr. Collinson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This application seeks retrospective planning permission for the change of use of land south of 158 Early Common to a residential gypsy and traveller site comprising 2 pitches, together with associated hard standing access improvements into amenity buildings. The amenity buildings are shown adjacent to Early Common, and the mobile homes, caravans, there'd be 2 statics positioned here, probably 2 tourers here. The site itself lies within Greenbelt and was formerly a small woodland parcel. It's currently occupied. An enforcement notice has already been issued requiring the cessation of the use and restoration of the land. Members are therefore required to consider whether planning permission should nevertheless be granted on its planning merits. The principal issues for consideration are greenbelt, landscape and ecological impacts, highway safety, residential amenity, the need for gypsies and traveller accommodation, and the personal circumstances of the occupiers. In terms of greenbelt policy, the site has been assessed under current guidance of the National Planning Policy Framework. Officers conclude that the land falls within the category of grey belt land and only makes a limited contribution to the relevant purposes. Furthermore, there have been recent appeal decisions which confirm that the council cannot have or demonstrate a 5-year supply of sites. As a result, there's an identified unmet need for pitches in the borough. As you'll see from the last agenda, details have been provided in terms of whether it is a sustainable location. It's considered that the site is sustainable when assessed in the round. While it's outside of the settlement boundary, it does have access to local services and a continuous footpath connection to Hurley and nearby bus services linking to the surrounding settlements. The development would provide a settled base for 2 traveller households and contribute towards meeting needs. The application does, however, result in significant harm. Before the unauthorised development took place, the site consisted of a woodland. Clearance of that woodland has resulted in the loss of a habitat and the biodiversity and character of the area. The site has changed from natural and verdant landscape to a more urbanised residential environment, and there's harm from that fact. Nevertheless, conditions are proposed requiring landscaping, biodiversity enhancement measures, off-site ecological preservation, and improved boundary treatments. No objections been received from the Highway Authority or Environmental Health, everything related to access improvements, visibility displays, drainage and lighting. Officers are satisfied that development would not result in unacceptable harm to neighbouring residential amenity. Finally, weight is afforded to the personal circumstances of the occupiers, including the presence of children, health considerations, on the recognised needs of the gypsy and traveller community. Having balanced both the harms and benefits, officers conclude that the adverse impacts do not significantly and demonstrably outweigh the benefits of the proposal, and therefore the recommendation is one of approval. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Gentlemen, welcome back to the council house. My colleague will explain the rules on public engagement.
Good evening. You've got 3 minutes to speak. I'll remind you at 2-minute marker that you've got 1 minute remaining. Will you be sharing the time?
Yes.
So shall I remind you at the 1.5 minute marker?
Yep.
I'll start the clock when you start speaking.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. My name is Richard Prosser. I am a resident of Hurley Common, which I've farmed on and lived on for the last 60 years, just over, and I'm speaking on behalf of the other residents of Hurley Common. We've already put forward our views, and you heard us in the last meeting here, so I don't need to reiterate all the detail. I just want to cover our main objections. And that is the fact that these applicants have moved on to what was an old garden to one of the adjacent cottages. They have then illegally cut down trees and shrubs, laid hardcore, and moved on both static, mobile caravans and sheds, all on something else. They are rapidly also converting it into a small industrial site. There are at least 2 pickups with high-sided twin-axle trailers going on, and a lorry with a crane occasionally appears there as well. They are now applying for retrospective planning permission. If granted, this will set a infill development for the whole of Hurley Common. Now then, as your site visit, you will have seen a clean and tidy site. Even perhaps the very green grass that they've got growing at the front, which rest of us have. But now this is a settled community in Hurley Common. Some of us, there are 2 or 3 families there that are now having their 5th generation just due to arrive that have lived there. The applicants refer to themselves as travellers. Now then, this is an old-fashioned settled community. Travellers, by their very nature, mean that they're going to be coming and going and are not going to be settled, joining in and relying on the community. So I urge you, as local councillors, to support the local people. There is doorbell. I could that's something you. Plenty of room there, and underneath the viaduct excavators too will soon be available. So I urge you to support our local people and refuse this application.
It's quite clear on the Borough website that there are over 60 objections to this site, including from the parish council. Obviously, we're representing our local constituent, and they are at arms at the way in which this has been done. Moving in on a bank holiday weekend and literally destroying all the woodland, moving on site, and then refusing to stop when told to stop. In Hurley, we've seen another very recent site set up, and the concern is that we've become a soft target. Adjacent to this site on Hurley Common, there is more woodland. What's to stop somebody else moving on to that if this application is approved and a precedent is set? There must be.
Thank you, Captain. Members, any questions for the speaker? Just one from me. Was there any more salient comments you had that you didn't get the opportunity to make?
It's more the way in which there must be a level playing field for all applications. We get a lot to review from the planning office, and then it's all been looked on with under the same guidelines. And where we have people that just flaunt those guidelines and move in and destroy habitat that's been there for years, it's not right that that should be accepted when if somebody else was to move onto that land to build a brick house, they'd be told to knock it down.
Thank you. Thank you.
We have had several over the years, quite a lot. In fact, probably nearly 10 applications for building on the infill sites.
and all have been refused by Warwickshire.
Members, no other questions? Thank you so much. Is Tracy McCready with? Would you like to take the chair?
Hello.
Hello, welcome to the meeting. Welcome to the council house. My colleague will now explain the rules on public engagement.
Good evening. You've got 3 minutes to speak. I'll remind you at the 2 minute marker that you've got 1 minute outstanding. I'll start the clock when you start speaking.
Thank you all for giving me this opportunity to speak. The lads on the site are my sons. I'll switch this on. Is it here, is it? Is it on? Yeah, sorry. Yeah, the lads are my sons. We was happily at a caravan site in Lutterworth for 16 years, which we had to leave. The local authorities will back this up, the police, the council, the school teachers, the councils all had letters and support for us to say it's genuine. Everything I say can be backed up by authority figures. But it's not just coming out of thin air. And like the gentleman says, this wasn't a green belt field, what we went into. This was a garden to the houses, which had brick buildings. It had our old garage there, and the trees, what they're on about, what we cut down. There was one nice apple tree, which is still remaining. All the rest was brambles and trees, what was smashed down. But we had a choice. We didn't just move over there on a bank holiday weekend, because it wasn't a bank holiday when we went there to check your records. It was a normal weekend. And we had a choice. We could either go on there, which the land belonged to us, or we could go on a car park. We didn't just say, oh, we're going on there because we own it. No, we contacted every authority within a 50-mile radius asking, have you anywhere to put us? He said, no. When we was on there, we said to this council, if you have anywhere else to put us, we will go. He said, we've got nowhere. So where do we go? I've got 2 sons. They've got a son of their own, which one's got 2 sons now, because one's just been born a few months ago. One's got another son, what's 2. He's getting another son on this Thursday. These women, they're not horses. They don't have kids at the side of the road. They need proper doctors like everybody else and proper medical care. These kids can't wait for the next 30 year for the council to build them somewhere. We've got to take action. We have no choice. It was the least thing we could do to put impact on the thing. Instead of moving from place to place, creating a big disruption, we went on there where we know they were safe, they could get in schools, they could get doctors, and they can get all the medical needs they need. And what else can we do? If anybody else has got a better place to put us apart from under HMS2 flyover ducks, I suggest if that's a suitable place to live, if we're not fit to live with, he can go and live there. Because I don't think it's fair for anybody to live there.
3 minutes a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you. Members, do you have any questions for our speaker?
Sorry.
Thank you for speaking. I was just going to ask, so your long-term plan is to try and stay settled on the site and let the family continue?
Yes, well, we ain't travellers. We're English gypsies. We originate from here. We've lived here all his life. We haven't just come in from any other country, island or anything. Where we are, this is where we live. We contacted every site. Inkley site, we asked to go on there. They said they've got 160 names down. In average, one family leaves every 10 years. So I said, what sort of waiting list we're looking at? They said between 1,600 years to get 2 pictures.
And have you got long-term plans for the children to go to schools and
Yes,
things like that?
well, one's already in nursery, the one wants 2. And the other ones, they're too young yet, if you know what I mean. So
Right, okay, thank you.
Any other questions, members? Councillor Bell?
Yeah, so I think you've applied for 2 pitches, is that?
that's correct, yeah.
Is that going to be sufficient for your growing families?
Yes, yes, at the moment, anyway. We are looking for more land. Yeah, we are looking to buy more land. Myself, I'm living at Swansea at the minute on a greenfield. And that's as far as I've got to go.
So just to be clear, so you purchased the land that you're on?
The land at Early belongs to us. It doesn't belong to anybody else. The land what I'm on at Swansea belongs to the Welsh Government, which I'm speaking now to represent to get land for the Welsh Government. The Welsh Government is employing me to help them do that.
Anything, any members? Councillor Powell?
So that you say you actually own the land that you're currently on. Did I get that? Yes.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Members who'd like to speak first? Councillor Philip?
Yes, thank you, Chair. As a local member, I can't support this. However sympathetic it may be to the individual, I find it unacceptable. But and I can't help, I've spoken to the residents up there, and the stories they say. But they as I think Councillor has said in his speech, that we've had people apply for planning permission to try and put garages on this land, and they've been refused because it's green belt. They can't put garages on the land. Their cars get wrecked because they're speeding past the doors. There's a gentleman just a few doors up who's applied for to put a house on another bit of green belt that he owns, and he's been refused for green belt. It's just out of all proportion that for local residents if a local resident was to move onto this land and do the same, we'd be prosecuting them. And so, as Chair, I can't support it, and I'd like to move that we reject this, and for that reason. Although when we visited, I noticed that there was facilities there, and I don't see the facilities as adequate there, and I'd like to move that we reject it on the LP10, that the inadequate facilities.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to speak? Councillor Waffle?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the speakers coming tonight. You just put in perspective both sides of the argument, and as we've heard from Mr. Collinson, we have got not enough by a long shot of areas to house travelling communities, apologies. The question possibly would be raised if we didn't agree to this tonight, where can they go? And I think that, to me, is part of what we have to propose tonight or accept or whatever, because if we say they can't have this, then what's the next step for them? And I think we have a responsibility. So whilst I don't agree with always retrospective planning permissions and so on, having heard from the speaker as to why that was the issue, I feel like, sometimes it's about working with the people, and seeing what the best solution is. It's not ideal. I don't agree with it myself, but what else could they do? Be empathetic about the situation. If you were in that situation, what would you do? He's explained that they bought the land, it's their land. The other alternative was to go on to some other land, which we all know, we've had issues with before. So what I'm trying to say is, when we make our decision, I think we've got to look at, it's not just that as the decision, it's then what's the solution longer term if we're not going to agree with this. And I think we have to look at it as a holistic situation rather than part of it. Thank you.
Thank you, councillor Wappers. I don't actually think the board has to consider where the applicant would go. I think the board has to determine land use and within the context of the plan. But I could be wrong, so could you clarify the legal position of what do we?
Sorry, when I said us, I meant us as a council. I didn't necessarily mean this board. Just to clarify, as in we are bigger than just the planning board. Sorry, Chair.
Okay, so as a moral issue.
As a moral issue, as a council, sorry, I should have made that clear. But I think that was where I was alluding to really, that we, you know, yes, we have to make a decision on what's in front of us. I get that. But we know that this is a bigger picture that we as a council have to look at. So I think we need to bear that in mind when we make a decision. Thank you.
Councillor Watts.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I mean, like Councillor Wapples, I'm not a great lover of retrospective applications because the work's already been done. But listening to the speakers, I kind of understand the position they were in. As was already said, they own the land. I mean, one of the concerns, though, is around biodiversity and offsetting. I noticed in the report, it says this site cannot meet its offsetting requirement. So rather than, as Councillor Phillips has recommended, a refusal, I'd like to recommend a deferral until we understand what that biodiversity net gain would be, where the offsetting would be done, etc.
Councillor Bell.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I would support a deferral, and I would also like to see some more information on the utilities on the site. I went on the site visit and was a little bit concerned that, you know, everything would be set up, water, sewage, electricity, etc. So if we could have, while it's being deferred, have some more information on that, that would be really helpful.
Any other speakers? Councillor Hayfield.
Thank you, Chair. I deplore this green belt bit. It seems a matter of convenience, really. You want to build on it, you call it green belt. If you don't want it built on, you call it green belt. I find that. I can understand why local residents think this is basically not a level playing field in terms of being able to, whether you can build on somewhere or not. Some people are allowed to build, while the rest of the people are not. And I think that I can understand why that rates, why that sort of really annoys them. I fear that if we turn this down, it could prove to be a hollow victory, because we don't have a great track record in defending these sites when it comes to appeal. But even if this ends up with a permission tonight or along the line, it's really unfortunate that the travelling community have generated a fairly bad reputation as poor neighbours, which is one of the reasons why the locals always fight against their applications. I just think if these are genuine families who genuinely want to settle down and make this their home and enjoy the neighbourhood and everything, it will be within their grasp to integrate themselves into the local community and be accepted as part of that local community. I have to say, based on experience at other sites, that very rarely happens. Anyhow, I'm waffling my way around to say that I would agree to a deferral, but I think I can see the way this is going to go.
Thank you. Anybody else wish to speak? Members, a couple of you have mentioned the fact that the applicant owns the land. I don't see that as a persuasive argument. Lots of people own land. That doesn't necessarily that doesn't count as a plus in favour of consent or even refusal. But again, is there any legal guidance on that?
Ownership isn't part of planning considerations.
Because I understand it, we grant consent for the land and it goes with whoever.
It does, yes.
Thank you. So I've heard a proposal and a seconder for deferral. You propose your motion first, Councillor Blitz. Are you happy to incorporate that, or would you like to take a vote on with you?
I'd whatever happens, Chair, I shall vote against it. I can't vote for it. I represent the people in that area, and they feel betrayed by this, and I find it difficult to say. As I say, I'm sympathetic to what's been said, and but I'm happy to accept the fact that you can move a deferment, but I personally will vote against it.
So I'll take that, but you'd prefer to have the vote. So
Yeah.
is there a seconder for councillor Phillips' recommendation? And by the way, I'm happy to second.
Right.
So we have two proposals, one for deferment and one for refusal. Given that I heard more speakers in favour of deferment, I'd like to take that first. So just so I'm clear on the reasons for deferment are for more information on
Biodiversity again.
and
Utilities.
anything else. Okay, can I see those in favour of deferment? Those against? That's deferred. I would point out that this is the second. You do need to get this. So I'm sorry, no. So members of the public, that issue was deferred. I will do my utmost to ensure that we make a decision at the next committee. And as before, if members of the public wish to stay with us, you're more than welcome to. Otherwise, you're more than welcome to not stay. Members, we move on, I think, now to application number 490 for a Elliston Leisure Complex at Long Street, Elliston. Anything to add to your report?
Nothing further to add. Thank
With the
you.
recommendation, Chair.
In your haste, does anyone wish to speak? Right, in that case, it's been proposed and seconded that consent is granted. I see those in favour. Those against. Application number 491 for the Elliston Leisure Complex. Anything to add to your report?
Nothing further to add to this, the recommendation report in front of you.
Members, any comments? All those in favour of the application? Those against? Thank you very much. Members, I need to move recommendation to 6, the exclusion of public and press. So that the going to private session in accordance with section 100A for the Local Government Act 1962, as it is in the public interest that public interest be excluded from the remaining items of business on the grounds that it will involve the likely disclosure of executive information as defined within section 4A. All those in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you.